All right, let's get started. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. The goal of this session is for us to have a conversation that brings teen and young adult voices to the table around how AI is designed, tested, and used. The BHT conference is filled with a wide variety of stakeholders who might not have the opportunity to hear from teens on this topic. And when we talk about AI and youth mental health, this isn't just a technical question. We also need to think about design, engagement, safety, and trust. So these are topics that we're going to be discussing today. The idea is, I'll tell you more about who I am, but that I'll bring a little bit of the scientific sort of research perspective. And then we have 3 youth who are participating with us today, 3 incredible youth. With lived experience and who are interested in youth mental health research and who are advocates in their community. So I guess we'll maybe start with introductions. Do you guys want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Harshini Patid. I'm a high schooler from San Diego, so very local here. And I'm a AIM Youth Mental Health Ambassador. So I've participated in the research, and I've also helped in advocating and continuing conversations about mental health.
Hello, my name is Mia Fournet, and I am also a senior that goes to high school in San Diego. I have been a part of AIM for a little bit now, and I am an AIM ambassador and researcher.
Hi everyone, my name is Sophie Chang, and I'm a junior from Los Angeles, and I'm also an AIM Youth Ambassador, and I'm so excited to be on this panel today.
Super thrilled to have the opportunity to talk with you. My name's Sylvanna Vargas. I'm an assistant professor of psychology at San Diego State University. And I'm also an AIM clinical science fellow from 2023. So super appreciative to the AIM Youth Mental Health Foundation for bringing us all together to talk about youth mental health and digital mental health. My research generally focuses on youth suicide prevention and how we can improve services for youth who come from underserved backgrounds. And I have a growing interest and experience in how we use technology to help us achieve this goal. So today we're going to talk about 3 different topics, and at the end we'll have time for people's questions if anyone has any. So first we want to talk a little bit about hearing from you guys about your experience and your thoughts about AI. We also want to talk about how we can design AI and tech with young people in mind. And then we're going to talk about the really important topic around responsibility and collaboration when we're thinking about bringing teens and young people into this discussion. So just to start off, if all 3 of you, we've kind of talked about this outside of today, if you could just talk about your experiences, either your own or with your friends, who have used an AI chatbot, a helpline, or a mental health app or tool to manage stress or get advice. If you could tell us about your experience, what worked, what didn't, any thoughts that you have like that.
I can start us off. So AI obviously is very prevalent in today. People use it for things far from just stress. It's also used for daily tasks, help with understanding your schoolwork and things like that. I think for me, AI has helped most with just daily tasks. Sometimes I'm asking it to give me a recipe for a batch of cookies, or I'm asking it to explain this problem to me in my physics class or my math class. And I think that a lot of students, I personally don't go to it for stress as much as a lot of other students do, but I do know that ChatGPT is one of the most used resources for therapy for kids. A lot of students, I've heard a lot of students in my AP English language classes talk about using AI for therapy, relieving their stress, whether it be socially or academically. I think that it's very, very big today.
Yeah, kind of along that lines, I know I've had a lot of friends, and I myself have definitely used it for academic support when it's oh, I need this concept explained to me in this way really quickly. I have 5 minutes before my test. But I also know I have some friends who will go to it for social situations where it's I have a friend who texted me this, or my boyfriend's talking to me like this, what do I do? And I think they go to it because AI and like ChatGPT is just so accessible, and because it's able to produce a response just like that, like so quickly. So I think that's like part of the appeal of using AI.
Adding on to what Sophie said, I do understand that a lot of people use AI to get opinions and just validation for what they want to do or what they're going to do. Example would be like, I'm going to make this big decision, why should I? And I think it's just used to strengthen our actions or what our opinions are on certain stances. So I feel like that's what AI is used for primarily.
So a lot of what you've heard about and the pros that you see are just the fact that it's like on demand, instant response. I've been there, not quite with a test, but like something I had to respond to an email that I forgot about, and you last minute need to ask AI to give you some advice on how to do something.
It's very versatile.
Yeah, it's
and
very
it gives you a good like starting sense of direction where it's like, oh my god, I have no idea where to start to even like think of a response.
Yeah.
Let me put it into chat and see what chat how it responds for me.
Yeah, like in a social context. Yeah. So things that have worked for sure, I think I'm with you on the like immediacy and the versatility. Are there things that you've heard from either your friends or your own experience specifically around AI use for stress or kind of using it to learn skills or manage a social situation where you're like, that part hasn't worked super well?
I think for me, one of the biggest things that I've personally taken into account is the fact that a lot of students and kids use AI to replace social skills. A lot of kids go to ChatGPT instead of learning, proper social skills and the idea of being able to communicate with people. I think that AI gives us so much important information because of its effectiveness of its speed, and it's so insanely accurate sometimes. It's like, oh wow, why didn't I think of that? I think it's taking away from our thinking and the ability for students to actually go ask for help. Like for example, a student just starts relying on ChatGPT over an actual therapist or their counselor, and they're making this having this connection with this bot, which I think takes away from human connection, which I think is very important today in our society, especially after COVID and all of these, younger generations coming out wanting to build connections with people. I think that ChatGPT takes, and AI in general, takes that away from a lot of students. While it does help, it also, I think that's a big factor. It's, well, are you getting help and losing all these connections with people and social skills and understanding, how do I come to someone and ask them for help?
I also feel like, along with what Harshini said, that people rather go to ChatGPT or go to AI rather than go to a therapist. The answers that you get from AI are addicting because they're not from actual professionals who have experience in the expertise. You get answers that you want. You get answers that sort of push you in a certain direction that you're addicted to hearing. So I feel like actually using AI where it's catered by professionals that deal with mental health or certain situations kind of give more accurate answers rather than answers that we want.
Yeah, kind of continuing off of what you just said about its validation. AI is such a validating tool. And because of this, if you're in an argument with someone, it's unable to assess all the different perspectives because you're really only going to give it yours. So because it's not able to take a step back and kind of look at the whole picture, the responses that it gives you and the feedback that it gives you automatically aren't going to be the best.
So it can be like an echo chamber of your own thoughts,
Yeah.
sort of. Yeah. And then there is this, Harshini, you brought up this point about it can get in the way, actually, sometimes of a really important skill and value of connection. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that a lot of stigma that comes with mental health is the idea that people don't ask for help in the first place. I know so many people who will just take stress on and keep that stress going and just, powering through, pulling all-nighters and losing their health, physical and mental, without actually asking for help. And half the time they don't even know how to ask for help. And I understand that AI can help into that factor, but I also think it should not become a source that everyone is dependent on. I think that real human interaction is what truly can help students and, you know, people of all ages. And I think definitely like younger ages, our ages the most with, you know, finding these connections with people, because I think that really we learn so much from others. And while that AI chatbot can give you a lot of answers, I think that going through the path and like figuring these solutions out with someone else, like with this timeline, instead of just getting these answers directly given, like having answers directly given to you, I don't think that's the solution, and I think that really takes away from the freedom of, you know, interacting with others.
Yeah, I feel like in today's culture, especially with our generation being so active on social media, there really has been a step back from human interaction in that like genuine human connection, because it's like, I can have so many followers on Instagram, I can have like mutuals of mutuals, and then like I have this huge network of people that I know, but how many people do I have that are actually close friends with me, right? And who are gonna be there to support me. And I think that AI is kind of dangerous because it's like another thing that humans can rely on that won't actually build that genuine human connection, even if it like might feel like that to someone.
Yeah, I believe there should be more or less, not a fine line, but a more prominent line on what's AI and how AI can refer us to actual resources, in-person resources, or things that can lead us a step further rather than just online.
I agree. I think being at this conference too has shown me how important connections are and interacting with humans. I've gained so much insight by just talking to a few adults, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing, and I've learned so much. And I think that with AI, it just giving you the answers like that doesn't really open up space for you to critically think and engage meaningfully. I understand that it's a great tool for those who are scared to speak out and find others and have them support them, but I think there has to be that fine line of, okay, well, maybe as like this AI bot can give you resources for in-person mental health support or websites that help and further like specifically on that mental health, whether it be like depression or anxiety, and give you those resources instead of just giving you the answer and validating your opinions all the time.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective because, you know, there is this argument that we can get to answers faster, be more efficient, right? Like, why learn this process of how do you do, I don't know, a math problem if you can just rely on an AI? I mean, when I was in school, it was a calculator. Like, we always have like a version of that. But you're bringing up this really good point that it's not just the learning that we're talking about, but the relationships that you develop while you're learning, and that actually these opportunities get lost if you just arrive at the answer right away. And so I guess we're already talking about this, but just kind of to shift the conversation, you know, I think like in my world, in the research world, in the tech world, we think and talk a lot about AI safety. This is something that's in the news a lot now in the mainstream. And we often think about things like harm reduction, and I think these are really important things to think about. But I guess I'm wondering what your all opinion is about safety with AI, and then also like aside from safety, what other things should we be thinking about and focusing on?
I think confidentiality is a big part of the safety aspect. A lot of people don't use AI or necessarily go to it in confidence that, you know, everything that you say will be within that bot, and it's not like on a list of history of like, you know, it's like not in some database somewhere. And I think that also what I'm saying won't be told to anyone. And I understand that there's a very big line with, you know, okay, they're in immediate danger with suicide or self-harm. And that's when, like, I don't even think ChatGPT would notify anyone. I don't think that's like embedded into its system.
Yeah, I don't think it's a mandated reporter.
Is it a mandated?
I
don't think
so.
it is. So like it's understanding that line of what will it report, what will it not, what can I say to, you know, not make it seem like I'm suffering so much, but also like have it help me and like not take my situation as light as it might. Because I think that the hardest thing with AI is figuring out how to communicate. Sometimes you know, it won't always like understand what we're saying, and we have to reiterate it. And then, you know, it's that understanding that like, is it going to be kept with us? Is it going to be just me and this robot, or is it going to be in a database somewhere, or is it? Is it?
Okay, I just kind of wanted to bring up a counterpoint to that, just because I think that another reason why people go to AI in the first place is because they're scared about confidentiality with maybe like a school therapist or another mental health resource. So they go to the AI because like it's essentially like you're telling a secret to a stranger rather than maybe someone like a parent, or like information that could get sent to like a parent or like a sibling or like a friend or a teacher.
But
So I feel like the confidentiality kind of goes both ways a little bit.
I also agree, but I do feel like even though a lot of people and students do go to AI because of fear of whatever they say being let out or just confidentiality in general, I feel like there's still like in the back of their mind that fear like, oh, you know, if I talk about my family situation, like what if it's taken into a light where it gets reported? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that with professionals like therapists and school counselors, they lay out that fine line of what will be said, what is, like every time I go to my school counselor and we're talking about something, they make it very much known that if you say anything like this, I'm a mandated reporter, I'm going to have to, talk to your parents and this and that. But I think with AI resources, a lot of them don't have that capability, and also a lot of them don't necessarily lay that out for the users, making it a little less reliable with that aspect of being confidential.
Yeah, it's a really good point about confidentiality, right? Because on the one hand, the reason why we have these limits of confidentiality in the therapy world or in the healthcare or school world is because of safety, because we want to make sure that if people are in crisis or in danger that we can intervene. And at the same time, we know that when we set a limit of confidentiality, that can make it so that someone won't tell us something. And so on the one hand, I could totally see that the upside, I think what we're saying is like the upside of AI is that maybe it's not constrained by these limits. The downside is that there's not a lot of transparency around what do you do, and then also what are the responsibilities like ethically of an AI when there is a situation where someone should be notified. What do you guys think?
I feel that in general, I think it is important to have boundaries on what should be reported, because there should be a change if there is domestic violence at home or bullying that could lead to potential suicide. I feel like there should be a limit on what should be taken seriously, but at the same time, I feel like there should be encouragement in, even though it might be reported, to still sort of give your situation, because we should like advocate getting help and having more of a like being vulnerable in knowing that change has to happen, even if it's hard.
I also think that with AI right now, I'm not sure if its capabilities are enough to be able to, make that decision that I need to send the cops to this person's address. They're in immediate danger. Because sometimes, it's like, it very much depends on that human interaction aspect. A therapist, when interacting with you, seeing signs of, self-harm and all that kind of stuff, it's a little bit more, it's you can tell more than an AI chatbot, and it depends on like how communicative that user is. And I think that like finding that line with that chatbot, like understanding, okay, this person might not be in the best mental state, maybe I can refer them to these resources instead of, immediately phoning like the cops or doing something that could lead to something negative. I think that understanding that line.
Yeah, I think the thing about AI right now is that AI won't escalate the situation unless you do first. So it's like its language will very much like mimic the urgency that you present to it. So it won't be able to like, again, it's a bot. It can't like read human cues. So that's definitely one of its limitations.
Yeah, it kind of seems like part of what we're talking about is like the degree to which AI should be acting human, and some of the limitations of like it's not going to be able, at least I mean the state of what it is now is not able to read all of these nonverbals, maybe miss some of the nuance that someone who is like really thoughtful and has a lot of experience as a clinician might be able to bring to a situation. And I guess I'm wondering, we've talked about this a little bit, like this idea of AI, like, should we strive for AI to be more human?
I think that, I think in the sense that you're having a human connection with a robot, it just doesn't make sense. And I think you mentioned this once on the news. There is this kid who developed like a
Romantic
relationship crush with his chatbot. And I genuinely think that adds to the idea that we are moving away from interacting with humans and just, being reliant on non-human beings. And I think that when you make something like AI too human-like, it just confuses the user and adds that aspect of what's real and what's not. Is this how I act with a human? Should I act the same with the robot, or should I act the same with the human as I do with the robot? Like, I think that it takes away from those ideas of social cues. And obviously there's like that line of not creating a relationship with a robot like that. And having that fine line of, okay, this is what I come to it for, but I have these resources they are humans.
It feels to me kind of manipulative, especially when the person using the AI isn't really in the right headspace. It feels kind of manipulative, which is why I feel like we shouldn't coax like the certain feelings someone has, but rather get them to real life help and real life professionals rather than just acting as if it's just another human connection.
Yeah, I feel like AI needs to do more like human referrals when it realizes that you're talking about a social situation or like a psychological situation with it.
I know we've had a version of this conversation before, but I'm always just so blown away by like the degree of wisdom that you all and nuance that you bring to this conversation. And I'm hearing like a real value in not wanting to create more things in life that distract or take away from your opportunity to connect one-on-one with a human, that there's like a place for AI as a tool. And particularly from the three of you, I'm hearing a lot about like, what if AI were more about finding opportunities to encourage human connection or encourage help seeking, which I love to hear about. I think I mentioned to you guys I have this project where part of what we're doing is using AI to help teens actually help other teens know when to look for help, to go to a trusted adult because they have something going on that they need mental health support around. So kind of seems like it's always cool to hear like we're thinking about the same kind of things, but it kind of seems like you're really seeing AI as like this line where things get blurred between the human and the robot, that can be deceptive, that can be to the detriment of like your opportunity to connect socially. It doesn't mean you have to do away with it, but that maybe there needs to be more clarity on what are the limits.
Yeah, I feel like AI would be like a good redirection tool where it's like maybe after a hard day you can vent to your AI chatbot, but then at the end of that vent, you want the AI to be like, hey, like, also talk to a friend, talk to a parent, like, talk to someone that you trust about like how you're feeling, just to like make sure that like further that social connection.
I agree. I think like this is a specific scenario, but if you're, really upset about an assignment in a class and a teacher, instead of AI just validating your feelings and, being on super negative with this teacher, they're directing you to be, communicative with the teacher. They're finding these other solutions and not just validating your opinions and thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a balance of like, we all like some validation, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was really crushed the day that I found out that AI does this for everyone. Like when it was telling me like my questions were really smart, I was like, oh, I feel so good about myself. And then I saw someone else's ChatGPT and I was like, oh, this is a real
They're the
betrayal.
exact same questions.
Yeah. But it's not just that, right? Like that. I mean, again, here I'm hearing like a lot of nuance that like AI could be an opportunity to point out where you could troubleshoot in your life so that you're not stuck. And I mean, we can see why that would be really dangerous, right? Like the example of the teacher, like if you're hating on your teacher, you still have to be in that classroom in all likelihood. And so how helpful would it be if all you got was validation around how much your teacher sucks instead of
It's a valid feeling.
Yeah, right. It's a valid feeling. Yeah, so the idea that there could also be nuance in the approach there to help you kind of move forward in your life rather than get you stuck in just wanting to hear more validation.
But at the same time, I feel like it's sort of just restates the negative emotion you're already having. So it kind of restates it, and like you said, it validates the emotions you're feeling. But when more strong emotions connect with more strong emotions and validation, I feel like it just further strengthens how you feel. So if it's hating your teacher or falling out with a friend, it's not making the situation better or giving you ways to think a different way or a different perspective, like you mentioned. It's sort of just restating how you feel rather than furthering what you could do to fix it.
I think having those kinds of conversations with real humans is a much better resource than just having those conversations with a chatbot, which could totally be just validating your opinions the whole time, or not really understanding the situation because you have to explain everything and you may not explain it as well as you would with a human.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the beauties of human interaction, right? That you can talk to 5 different people and they can all give you a different opinion, which is part of what helps you maybe have a little bit more flexibility around how you think about your teacher or how you think about a fight with your friend. And if you are stuck in this loop of just hearing your same thoughts, like Mia, like what you were saying, I think is this idea that like it might just like kind of get you more stuck there, because it's kind of like just hearing people tell you, yeah, this person sucks, rather than trying to give you a little bit of perspective. But that can be really challenging, right? Like going back to this idea of like, should AI act human? I think even for a human that can be really challenging, of like striking this balance of I want to hear what you're saying and then give you a different perspective. So it's a tall order for AI. So I like this idea of like, what if it could refer you to our natural environment where we already do that for each other? Okay, so shifting topics a little bit, I do want us to talk a little bit about this idea of designing AI. And I'm wondering if you think about startups, designers, providers, researchers like me, adults in general, like what should they do differently if they really want to co-create with youth? And I'm thinking this is probably a question that many people in the audience are interested in.
I think a really big thing about any work that you're doing with youth is to always make sure that you incorporate youth voices into like the perspective and the like idea of whatever it is that you are creating, just so you have that level of authenticity, and you gain that just like quality and the knowledge of knowing that like, okay, these conclusions that I've come to, they were backed by teens, like made by teens for teens.
An example I believe would be is that to start off like the stigma around getting help from AI, I would say that among our peers, it would be viewed as relatively embarrassing, or going to a robot when you need help, when you need someone to talk to. I feel like a youth perspective we would be able to bring, or just the youth in general, is how our peers view other youth. There's an expectation where you shouldn't go to your chat AI box or your Snapchat AI because it seems like you're lonely. I feel like that's the main idea of it, and we should reduce stigma surrounding it.
I think that having youth represent the companies or your projects or startups is a great way to incorporate those ideas. And I think great ways to do that are by having internships or paid positions, or a title that the student or youth representative can hold, so that they can help work with your company to, again, like talk about those ideas of, well, in my community, in my age group, using AI as a source of therapy is not very much viewed with the best mindset. It's not very much looked at with positivity and all of that idea. And same thing with like reaching out for help. So I think that having that youth perspective can really help target youth specifically.
Yeah, so your perspective brings a lot of value, right? A lot of value in terms of your backing, in terms of your ensuring that, or helping ensure, or increase the chances that the product that's being developed is going to be like acceptable and interesting to the youth market, right? And I guess when I hear that, one thing that I always think about is how easily your perspectives could be exploited, right? Because when we think about tech, like what a massively lucrative industry. And so how do you guys think about that? This idea that you could participate in giving your feedback and your your perspective to improve a product that then a company could profit like millions and millions of dollars. What did you get in return?
I think that goes off the idea of, having a paid position or, an internship or a title that you are doing something, and then having, like if there's a page for citing sources, your name is under there and the student is given credit for their work that they've done. I think that recognition is an important aspect, and also in the idea that you're not exploiting someone having an actual position, and you're not just, looking at the teens, having their opinions and research and just taking those and using them.
Yeah, similarly, I think that there definitely needs to be some form of like compensation, whether it's like actual money, like community service or like networking opportunities. I think that it would just be like so like wrong to like have the idea that you can have a bunch of students in like or teens in like a council for your company, but then you just take their ideas and you don't actually give them any credit for it.
Along with what Sophie said, since it's our time too, I think compensation does make sense along with credit, because our opinions do have value and they do bring value to the conversation in which we're contributing in.
Yeah, we think about this a lot in the kind of research that I do, and how do we bring in people from the community to make sure that we're doing research that makes sense for the community, but that also they're benefiting in the same way that we are. And people have different models. Like they put community partners on research grants where they make a salary that's similar to the director of the study. They're kind of like involved in any publication that we publish. They're co-authors in the publication. So I'm seeing some parallels here in this idea of like, well, who gets credit for this innovation? How are you being compensated, right? I think it would be really easy to think, well, I'm giving a high schooler an internship opportunity, which of course is great for your resume, but I guess it's thinking about like, how do you balance the benefit, right? Did this high schooler, did someone like you benefit quite in the same way as a company? And of course a company is investing a lot of money in developing their product, but at the same time are really benefiting from that perspective. So I like some of the ideas that you're bringing to the table. So just looking at the time, I guess, I'm wondering if you have any questions for me.
I did just talk about just the stigma around AI. What do you think would be the best to decrease that, especially among peers and high schoolers?
That's a really good question that I wish I had the answer to. So I think your question basically is like, if there's this stigma around using things like a chatbot, and you said this idea of, oh, because then other people will know that you're lonely or that you're struggling. To me, that sounds a lot like the same kind of stigma that when I was in high school was how people talked about like mental health services, right? This like admitting that you're struggling and that's why you need to see a therapist. And I think we've come like some way around that, but at the end of the day, this is all like mental health stigma that we're talking about. And I think, there's a lot of people kind of trying to work on that, but it's so context dependent. And, I think probably you guys, I'm guessing you probably know this, like your school culture can really influence the degree of stigma that you have associated with mental health services. It's just like such a tricky question. I wish I had the answer, but it sounds like another version of like this generation's version of mental health stigma.
This might be a complicating question, and like it would take like research and things like that to help, but there's also stigma when it comes to gender. There's a higher representation of female representing people who will ask for help and come to like sources like the AI platform for therapy or go to an actual therapist, and men are like backed by like statistics and research. Men are least likely to actually ask for help. How would you kind of help that situation and direct your research and technology to help with that kind of barrier?
Oof. Wow, these are really hard questions. Yeah, it is, right, it's true. So, like generally we see this pattern of females or cis women presenting more to services than males. And I think there's probably a lot that goes into that, right? Like part of it is probably stigma for sure. part of it related to stigma is how we're socialized, like traditionally, these like stereotypically kind of cis roles, this idea that women and girls are encouraged and socialized to talk about their feelings more than boys over their lifetime. And so I think like some of that is probably what ends up creating these different pathways. I'm not really, again, not really sure. You guys had so many answers. I don't have any answers. I'm not really sure. You know, I think there's like multiple ways you can do that. Like sometimes people, there's all these things around like early elementary or kindergarten schools trying to change and be really thoughtful about the gender roles that they're affirming for kids, so that, you know, traditionally boys are not encouraged to share their feelings, so that they do more of that. And the idea is that you're kind of setting that foundation early on. But I think a lot of the questions that you guys are asking about are just like these really big societal questions that a lot of structures that we have in place uphold, right? Like stigma exists in our culture, but it also exists in our institutions, and the policies that we have are informed by these stigmas that we hold, and those policies end up reinforcing these issues. So it's kind of like a multiple level kind of problem. And you know, I think traditionally we have this idea that all we need to do is like a campaign to beat the stigma and like change the way that people talk about things. And generally the research has found that when you only do that, that's not a super effective way to change stigma. You really need to think at multiple levels. Like you need to think about policy, you need to think about how people are spending money, you need to think about the messaging, you need to think about like a bunch of different things to be able to make these changes. So they're tough questions, tough issues.
I totally agree with you. I think that like starting younger and, you know, through our like education systems and things like that, breaking that barrier. But I also think that the way you market something can also really help. Like for certain AI technologies that are used for therapy, I think just like marketing it and like finding ways to target, you know, maybe the male audience or the, you know, people who are more closed off, things like that. I think that that could also definitely help, because it's impossible really to break gender roles because they've been going on for so long. But I think that obviously starting somewhere with education systems is a great idea.
Yeah, that's a really great point. This idea that like if people know about these disparities, then they can be more intentional in trying to recruit and have better representation, right? So that's, I mean, that's a way to think about marketing. We do that in research too, that we're like intentionally trying to make sure that a certain segment of the population is being represented in our research, so that what we have actually ends up reaching them and impacting them. Yeah, it's almost like you have research training. Do you any other questions? We could also, we could turn it over to the audience if people have any questions for our brilliant teens here.
Hi, my name is Andres. I am a co-creator with Headstream. First of all, I wanted to thank you three for that incredible talk. I think your insights are truly remarkable and beneficial to almost everyone in this room, if they're in the world of AI or healthcare or whatever, really. I have a question for you, and you brought it up briefly, but I wanted to expand on the topic a little bit further. You talked about self-harm and confidentiality with AI. And we're seeing multiple cases pop up across the United States where AI is guiding a young person, and it's specifically two young men who have taken their lives, and AI helped them and guided them through the topic. And so I'm curious to know, what are some safeguards or safe rails that you three, and this is for everyone, you three have in mind that OpenAI or other machine learning models can take in order to take proactive steps in protecting young people's mental health and ultimately saving lives. And yeah.
You mentioned that the AI chatbot helped save these men's lives, or they took their lives and took their lives. Oh, guided them to take their lives.
I feel like this goes back to the validation point, where it's like AI is kind of an echo chamber for existing thoughts. So if you have those thoughts and you are going to AI, like I think that is the wrong place that you need to be. And I think that this goes back to our point of AI really needing to like, one, like have those mandated reporting systems, and two, really redirect like an individual who's experiencing these feelings back to an actual human.
I also think miscommunication can play a part there. That's the thing that happens. You know, I was talking about how you can better express what you're going through with a therapist or someone in person, but miscommunicating with AI is so much easier because it's the way you type things out. And the way you present the topics, maybe you don't present them as severe, or maybe you over exaggerate them. I think that with AI, miscommunication is a really, really big part. So at least like tweaking it or finding ways for it to not so directly affect the person, but you know, obviously finding that fine line of this is what I will do, but I'm not going to push for a change or action. I think someone had a question right there. Did you want to?
I was just going to say, for a solution that you brought up, I would definitely say it's kind of risky, but word detection, because certain keywords are used. I know AI has certain keywords used that sort of play a part in what should be reported, what shouldn't. So I feel like that can be a solution. It's just risky because you never know what context the word is being used in.
First of all, I just want to thank the three of you for talking to us. I think you have a really powerful voice. And as an adult, wanting to hear that voice more, I think it's super brave to be in front of this huge audience. This is one of the bigger audiences I've seen today, so. And then I just want to acknowledge that when adults are trying to create safety for teens, a lot of times we do really pendulum type decisions, like let's ban all cell phones in all schools, period. I'm sorry if you're a diabetic that has a cell phone glucose monitoring device on it, shucks. And I think part of that is because it's adults making decisions for teens. And so I wonder, how can we engage more teens in policy decisions? How can we engage you in advisory councils? How can we bring you to the table in front of legislators? Like, what could I do as an adult to decrease barriers for your voice to be heard at policy levels?
I definitely know several people who are passionate, or several students or peers alike who are passionate in trying to make a change in our community or society in general. So I think just getting the word out and just letting people know, like us, yeah, and letting just students or the youth know that they do have a voice and they can make change. Because I feel like it's just like, you're young, you don't have a voice. I feel like that's very prominent.
I think you also answered it, like having a student advisory board or having students be on a team that makes change, like adults that make changes or laws or enact, you know, different things like the cell phone ban in schools, having a student representative in that group or in that, you know, setting is definitely very, very helpful. And I think that is a direct voice that they can use when enacting those certain things. Because I know there's so many different point of views when it comes to cell phone use. Yeah, it's distracting, but also, again, there are a lot of health barriers that come with it, or a student who, you know, might be having a family crisis this one week and has to have their phone with them so they can contact their parents. It's very complicating, and I think that having students on those boards or representatives or liaisons, it's a great idea.
Yeah, and I think adding on to that, it's not just having students on these boards or having these boards, it's giving these boards power and actually having them mean something within the community. Because you can have these boards in your school, you can have like a student council in your school that makes all these decisions, but if their decisions like are always going to be ridden by adults, then it's like what's the point? Like, I don't know if that answers your question.
Hello. So first of all, again, I want to just echo all the gratitude showed for all of you being on this panel, and really, you know, leveraging your powerful voices to help us understand how we can do AI responsibly. I have the privilege of working with young people like you all who co-created with us a solution to connect them to resources. And we use AI in a very limited way, and we're using it in the way that you all have promoted, so it was very affirming hearing your ideas. However, this is kind of a selfish question, but I do want to get your perspective. We have wonderfully reached hundreds of thousands of young people, And some of those young people live in communities where there is not a single mental health professional where they live, not in their schools, not in their communities. And they may be a young person that holds an identity that is not affirmed, so therefore it's not safe for them to share what they're dealing with on a day basis. And I've heard from those young people directly and saying we need something else. And perhaps another sort of push on AI or some digital solution is what we need, because there isn't a human support to show up for me. So given that team perspective, I wanted to get you all's thoughts on how we should think about responsibly reaching that young person who may not necessarily have that human resource that is trusted and is safe.
I think with AI, like, so for example, we were talking about it being able to reference you to in-person assistance or therapy that is very close to you. I think that if AI is knowledgeable enough to know that, it would also be knowledgeable enough to know that there are no resources. This student is in an area that is very underfunded, and they don't have, wellness centers or therapy centers. And I think that, and this is like, again, like the communication aspect and forcing that, I don't feel safe in this community to express my thoughts, and I don't have a resource to go to. What are your opinions? I think directing it in that way, and again, I don't know if students are that well communicative with chatbots in that sense, so that makes it very difficult with, okay, well, will the student explain their situation? And it could obviously be misinterpreted and miscommunicated, which adds to that idea. So I think having that chatbot be specified to, like, okay, they don't have this resource in their area, what can I do as of right now without pushing any limits could help. But that is a very difficult situation and a question to answer. And I think that as time goes, it should also be that that community should gain those resources, open therapy centers, or find resources in their schools to help students.
I also know that there are a lot of online resources. For example, Teen Line is one of them that I know a lot of teens use when they need someone to talk to, and I think that these are more readily accessible. Maybe if you can't go somewhere in person, that AI could, it's still another human voice that the AI could refer you to. So I think for me, it's all about AI referring the person to authentic human voices. You don't necessarily have to be in person. You can be on a call, on a Zoom, but still having that connection with another person.
Looks like we're out of time for today, but obviously us going over time just shows how valuable and truly impressive, and we're very lucky to hear from you. So thank you so much. Let's have another round.